though as he was going to faint and felt a bit sick myself. अब मिसेस जॉनसन का मर्डर हो गया था, ऐसा लगा कि लेडना जो है फेंट होने वाले और मैं भी बहुत वो थी. Dr. Rainey examined it with professional gusto. No fingerprints, I assume, he threw out. No fingerprints. Dr. Rayleigh took out a pair of forceps and investigated delicately. Fragrant of human tissue and hair. Fair blonde hair. That's the unofficial verdict. Of course, I'll have to make a proper test, blood group, etc. But there's not much doubt. Found under Miss Johnson's bed? Well, so that's the big idea. She did the murder and then God's rest her remorse came to her and she finished herself off. It's a theory, pretty theory. Theory है मिसेस जॉनसन ने मर्डर किया फिर रिमोर्स आया उन्होंने अपने आप को मार दिया. Dr. Ledner could only shake his head helplessly. Not Anne, he murmured. I don't know where she hid this to begin with, said Captain Maitland. Every room was searched after the first crime. Something jumped into the mind and I thought, in the stationery cupboard, but I didn't say anything. Wherever it was, she became dissatisfied with its hiding place and took it into her own room, which had been searched with all the rest. Or perhaps she did that after making up her mind to commit suicide. I don't believe it, I said aloud. And I couldn't somehow believe that kind, nice Miss Johnson had battered out Miss Lardner's brains. मिस लांडा का सर जो है मिस जॉनसन ने फोड़ा है इसको विश्वास ही नहीं हुआ. I just couldn't see it happening. And yet it did fit in with some other things. Her fit of weeping that night, for instance. After all, I'd said remorse myself, only I'd never thought it was remorse for anything but the smaller, more insignificant crime. I don't know what to believe, said Captain Maitland. There's the French father's disappearance to be cleared up too. The men are out hunting around in case he's been knocked on the head and his body rolled into a convenient irrigation ditch. मतलब मामा एक फादर लिविग्नी भी खो गए ना, तो वो पुलिस का वो जो बंदा था ना उसके बंदे जो थे वो फादर लिविग्नी को भी ढूंढ रहे थे कहीं खाई में ना मिले. मिस जॉनसन को भी ऐसा लग रहा था कि उनको रिमोर्स आया, उन्होंने अपने आप को मार दिया. Oh, I remember now, I began. Everyone now looked at me inquiringly. It was yesterday afternoon, I said. He'd been cross-questioning me about the man with the squint who was looking in at the window that day. Yesterday afternoon, इसने फादर लिविग्नी जो था वो इसको लेडी को क्रॉस क्वेश्चन कर रहा था. He asked me just where it stood on the path and then he said he was going to have a look around. उन्होंने फादर लिविग्नी ने कहा कि भैया वो लड़का आदमी कहाँ था, वो जाके देखेगा. He said in detective stories the criminal always dropped a convenient clue. Damned if any of my criminals ever do, said Captain Maitland. So what's he after? Was it? By Jove, I wonder if he did find anything. A bit of a coincidence if he and Miss Johnson discovered a clue to the identity of the murderer at practically the same time. Coincidence होगा अगर दोनों मिस जॉनसन और फादर लिविग्नी ने मर्डरर का पता लगा लिया at the same time. He added irritably, man with a squint. Man with a squint, there's more in the stare of that fellow with a squint than meets the eye. वो आदमी जिसकी स्क्विंट थी वो कौन था, you know? हाँ. I don't know why the devil my fellows can't lay hold of it. Probably because he hasn't got a squint, said Poirot quietly.
स्क्विंट क्या होती है?
Squint ऐसी होती है ना, ऐसे. पता नहीं.
भेड़िया?
Do you mean he? हाँ भेड़ी. Do you mean he faked it? Didn't know you could fake an actual squint. Purely medicine. A squint can be a very useful thing. The devil it can. I'll give a lot to know where that fellow is now, squint or no squint. Interesting. As a guess, he said Poirot, he has already passed the Syrian frontier. वो जो आदमी with the squint था वो Syrian frontier जा चुका है. We won't tell Kochek and Abu Kamal all the frontier posts in fact. I should imagine he took the route through the hills. The route trolleys sometimes take when running contraband. Captain Martland granted. Then we'd better telegraph there is Zor. Did so yesterday, warning out to look out for a car with two men in it, whose passport will be in the most impeccable order. Captain Maitland favored him with a stare. You did you? Two men? Eh? Para nodded. There are two men in this. इसमें दो लोग हैं. It strikes me, Mercupillo, that you have been keeping quite a lot of things up your sleeve. Poirot said, no. He said, not really. The truth came out to me only this morning when I was watching the sunrise. जब मैं sun को rise करते देख रहा था, मुझे सच्चाई पैदा हुई. A very beautiful sunrise. I don't think that any of us noticed that Mrs. Mercado was in the room. She must have crept in when we were all taken aback by the production of that horrible great blood-stained stone. But now, without the least warning, she set up a noise like a pig having its throat cut. Mrs. Mercado chillai. Oh my God, she cried, I see it all now. It was Father Livigny. He's mad, religious maniac. He thinks women are sinful. He's killing them all. First Mrs. Leidner, then Mr. Johnson, and then next it'll be me. Father Livigny सब औरतों को मार रहा है क्योंकि औरतें sinful होती हैं. With a scream of frenzy, she fell across the room and clutched at Dr. Rayleigh's coat. I won't stay here, I tell you. I won't stay here a day longer. वैसे रहना तो भैया बड़ा मुश्किल है उस घर में. There's danger all around. He's hiding somewhere, waiting his time. He'll spring out on me. Her mouth opened and she began screaming again. I hurried over to Dr. Riley, who had caught her by her wrist. I gave her a sharp slap on her cheek, and with Dr. Riley's help, I sat down in a chair. Nobody's going to kill you, I said. We'll see to that. Sit down and behave yourself. She didn't scream anymore. Her mouth closed and she sat looking at me with startled, stupid eyes. मिसेस मर्कादो जो थी घबरा गई. उनको लगा कि फादर लेविग्नी ने सबका मर्डर किया है और अगली बारी उनकी बारी है. पहले मिसेस लाइडना, फिर मिसेस जॉनसन और अब मेरी बारी है. Then there was another interruption. The door opened and Sheila Rayleigh came in. Her face was pale and serious. She came straight to Poirot. I was at the post office early, Monsieur Poirot, he said, and there was a telegram there for you, so I brought it along. Thank you, mademoiselle. He took it from her and tore it open while she washed his face. It did not change that face. He read the telegram, smoothed it out, folded up neatly, and put it in his pocket. Mrs. Mercado was watching him. She said in a choked voice, Is that from America? He shook his head. No, madam, he said. It is from Tunis.
Is it so?
Tunis. She stared at him for a moment as though she did not understand. Then, with a long sigh, she leaned back in her seat. Father Livigny, she said, I was right. I've always thought that something was queer about him. He said things to me once, I suppose he's mad. She paused and then said, I'll be quiet. But then I must leave this place. Joseph and I go in and sleep at the rest house. Patience, madam, said Poirot. I will explain everything. Captain Maitland was looking at him curiously. You've considered it, you've definitely got the hang of this business, he demanded. Poirot bowed. It was almost theatrical, bow. I think it rather annoyed Captain Maitland. Well, he barked, out with it, man. But it wasn't the way Hercule Poirot did things. I saw perfectly well that he meant to make a song and dance of it. I wondered if he really did know the truth or if he was just showing off. He turned to Dr. Rayleigh. Will you be so good, Dr. Rayleigh, as to summon the others? अब ममा खत्म होने वाली है.
कितने बने पेज?
अभी देखो. बस मिस्ट्री आने वाली. सबको बुला लिया उसने. मतलब अब ये रिवील करेगा. Dr. Rayleigh jumped up and went off obligingly. In a minute or two, the other members of the expedition began to file into the room. First Ryder and Emmett, then Bill Coleman, then Richard Carey, and finally Mr. Mercado. Poor man, he really looked like death. I suppose he was mortally afraid that he'll get hauled over the coals for carelessness in leaving the dangerous chemicals about.
तो उसको 2 फल थे ना, वो मैंने दे दिए, फ्रिज में थे
अच्छा
वो।
ठीक है
मशीन, वो क्या नाम है उसका, डिश वॉशर ऑन करना।
ठीक है, मैं भी
हाँ,
कर
वो
देता हूँ।
दरवाजा बंद कर, किचन का दरवाजा बंद कर।
चलो तुम लोग
बंद
ऊपर
कर
चलो,
दिया।
मैं आता हूँ।
हाँ
सामने का बंद नहीं करना है ना अभी।
सामने नहीं, सामने का तो अभी नहीं करना, पापा आएंगे।
हाँ तो बस अंदर वाला कर देती हूँ।
किचन वाला बंद कर दो, किचन का।
हाँ ठीक है, वो तो कर दिया।
ठीक है
उसको देख के बंद कर
या
दिया।
तुम ऐसा करो, हेलो
दादी को गुड नाइट करती हूँ। गुड नाइट। क्या हुआ तुम्हें?
गुड नाइट। अच्छा बेटा, गुड नाइट। अरे देखो शरारत करती है।
चला
चलो।
भाई।
Dr. Ailey jumped up and went off obligingly. In a minute or two, the other members of the expedition began to file into the room. First Ryder and Emmett, then Bill Coleman, then Richard Carey, and finally Mr. Mercado. Poor man, he really looked like death. I suppose he was mortally afraid that he'd get hauled over the coals for carelessness and leaving the dangerous chemicals about. Everyone seated themselves around the table very much as we had done on the day Monsieur Poirot arrived. Both Bill Coleman and David Emmett hesitated before they sat down, glancing towards Sheila Rayleigh. She had her back to them and was standing, looking out of the window. Cheers, Sheila, said Bill. David Emmett said in a slow, pleasant drawl, won't you sit down? She turned then and stood for a minute looking at them. Each was indicating a chair and pushing it forward. I wondered whose chair she would accept. In the end, she accepted neither. I'll sit here, she said brusquely, and she sat down on the edge of a table quite close to the window. That is, she added, if Captain Maitland doesn't mind my staying. I'm not quite sure what Captain Maitland would have said, Poirot forestalled him. Stay by all means, mademoiselle, he said. It is indeed necessary that you should. She raised her eyebrows. Necessary? That is the word I use, mademoiselle. There are some questions I shall have to ask you. Again her eyebrows went up and she said nothing further. She turned her face to the window as though determined to ignore what was went on in the room behind her. And now, said Captain Maitland, perhaps we shall get at the truth. He spoke rather impatiently. He was essentially a man of action. At this very moment, I feel sure he was fretting to be out and doing things, directing the search for Father Livigny's body, or alternatively sending out parties for his capture and arrest. He looked at Poirot with something akin to dislike. If the beggar's got anything to say, why doesn't he say it? I could see the words on the tip of his tongue. Poirot gave a slow, appraising glance to it all, then rose to his feet. I don't know what I expected him to say. Something dramatic, certainly. He was that kind of person. But I certainly didn't expect him to start off with a phrase in Arabic. Yet that is what happened. He said the word slowly and solemnly and really quite religiously, if you know what I mean. Bismillahi or Rahman or Rahim. And then he gave the name of translation in English, in the name of Allah, merciful and compassionate. ये चैप्टर खत्म हुआ.
चलो अब बाद में,
ठीक है, हुआ क्या? चलो
चलो अब बाद में फाइनल करेंगे आराम से। अपू